Hey everyone! We all want to make sure that our children are developing properly, and as a mom myself, I know the fear that comes with wondering if your child is keeping up, if they're hitting their milestones on time, if they're doing the right things like their peers are. But sometimes it's hard to know what's normal and what's not normal. When should we be concerned and when should we not be concerned? So today I want to talk about 5 of the most common myths about childhood development, specifically in toddlerhood, and really dig into why those myths just aren't true, and what you can do to help combat those fears and really help your toddler succeed. Hi, I'm Tori. I have my master's in educational psychology, and I'm also a mama to a little toddler boy who is full of life, full of energy. So I know what it's like to have that mom guilt about maybe your baby not hitting their milestones quite as fast as you thought they would, or just being worried in general about, are you doing enough? Am I doing enough things with them? Am I pushing hard enough? And really wondering, when do I start to worry about my child not hitting milestones? And today I want to talk about the 5 most common myths that we might believe about toddlerhood and why they're simply not true, to hopefully give you a little peace of mind about what you're doing with your little one. So let's dive right in. The first myth is that all children develop at the same pace. If you've ever been around a bunch of children your child's age, particularly like in their daycare, you will know that this is simply not the case. All children, they get their teeth at a different age. They start crawling at a different age. They start walking at a different age. And even some kids, they'll start out hitting those milestones early, like they'll start rolling over early. My son did that. And then he crawled late and he walked on time. So just because they hit one milestone a little bit late doesn't mean they won't hit the others on time or early. And really, we just shouldn't be comparing our children to other children in general, because children are so unique and the journey of development is so unique. It's impacted by so many factors, external, internal, the things that you're doing, and just part of who they are. That left to their own devices, they will hit these milestones with just a little bit of encouragement from you. Okay, myth number 2 is that late talkers will always have language difficulties. So language development is huge. In this first year of life, baby's brain is growing so much, and even into the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th years of life, you hear how much the brain grows in the first 5 years, and part of that is language development. And it's huge. Language is something that we use throughout our life. As adults, we use it every single day. So it's an important skill to be working on and to be mastering. We want our toddlers to be working on it. But just because you have a late talker does not mean, one, that something's wrong with them, or that they will continue to have speech difficulties their whole life. Now, early intervention can be a great tool if you believe that that's something that your child would benefit from. It's great to have a talk with their pediatrician and just say, can we be proactive in this and get some early speech intervention? It doesn't hurt. It can only help. But most children, if you're talking with them, if you're reading them books, and if you're exposing them to your language, will start talking, and will start talking on milestone in their own time. Okay, myth number 3, that picky eaters are a cause for concern. Now, I have dealt with a very picky eater myself. He is kind of a day of the week sort of thing. It's not like only 5 foods that he'll eat. It's just only that he will eat when he wants to eat, what he wants to eat. So I get the struggle. It is so hard, and it is hard to feel like dinner time is always a battle. But toddlers just kind of have their own pattern of eating, and that's okay. Toddlers also have different caloric needs each day, meaning today they really could only need 1 banana and a tube of yogurt, and they're good to go. And tomorrow they might need 12 chicken nuggets at lunch and a whole ham sandwich for supper. Their body is just changing and growing at such a rapid pace, but they really know what they need when it comes to eating. They won't starve themselves. While there's outliers in this, there are some children that struggle with like sensory disorders or early signs of autism or something like that that impacts their feeding habits. That's not the case for most toddlers. Most toddlers are just picky. Most toddlers want to exert their will at the dinner table. And I know that's hard for you, and a lot of times the best tip I can give you is to not let it be that battle. Pick your battles wisely. I'm sure you've heard that term, and make dinner as low pressure as possible. Eventually they will come around and they will eat better. It's simply just a phase in toddlerhood. Okay, myth number 4, that tantrums are a sign of behavioral problems. This is a huge one. Tantrums are so hard. I get it. Especially at the end of a long day. You've been at work, they've been at daycare, we're both tired, we both need to eat dinner, and it just seems like it's tantrum after tantrum. But the unfortunate truth is that tantrums are just part of toddlerhood, because your toddler has all these feelings that they've never felt before. They're experiencing so many things in the world that they've never experienced before. And they don't know how to put words to it. And they don't know how to tell you what they're feeling. And they don't have the emotional capability or the emotional strategies to really cope well. That's not something that our children are born with. That's something that we have to teach them. So during tantrums, the best thing you can do is just take a step back. Take a breather for yourself and remember that. One of the best things I've heard as a mother is that your child is not trying to give you a hard time, they're having a hard time. So thinking more about how can I help give them the skills to cope with their emotions in this moment, and really what are their emotions in this moment, because sometimes that's the first step that we need to take, is identifying what the problem is, because there's always a problem. And you might feel like the problem is inconsequential. They wanted the blue cup instead of the red cup. But to them, like, that's a big deal, because it's a choice that they get to make when they're these little creatures that get to make very few decisions for themselves. So they want some sort of power and control in their life. That's where a lot of tantrums stem from. So if we can give that to them and we can help them recognize their emotions and learn to deal with their emotions, that's what they need when they're throwing a tantrum. They don't need punishment. They don't need to be disciplined in some way, because when they're in that space, when their amygdala is firing, and their emotions are really high, that's not a teaching moment. They're not hearing you in that moment. They need to regulate, and they need to calm down, and they need your help with that. So to go back really to the myth is that they're a sign of behavior problems. They're not. They're the sign of a typical toddler coping with the skills that they have, which just isn't enough for the big feelings that they have. You're not doing anything wrong. If your toddler is having tantrums at any point in the day, but especially the end of the day when they're tired and they're just struggling with all these feelings that they have, it's nobody's fault. It's just a skill that needs to be taught in emotional regulation. Okay, number 5. The early readers are always more advanced. You might be starting to feel the push. If your toddler is getting to that 3, that preschool age, maybe 4 years old, that you want them to be an early reader and you want to set them up for success. While it is totally possible for kids to learn to read this early, in some cases, it's not possible for every child. Like we talked about in the first thing, every child develops at their own rate and their own pace. And reading is just not in the cards for every child, and that's okay. They will learn in their own time. And just because your child reads early doesn't mean that they necessarily will have no academic problems down the road. It's not a predictor of future success necessarily. Now, does it set them up for future success? For sure. But there are some children that learn to read early and then kind of hit a stagnant period in like kindergarten and first grade where they really struggle to progress those reading skills. That's not uncommon. It's not bad. It just takes some extra work from parents and their teachers to keep them going on the right track. But it's not detrimental to your child either way. Now, reading to them is so good for their brain, but you should have reasonable expectations that your child, your toddler, may or may not be able to learn to read before they go to kindergarten. And either way that they go, it's totally fine. They will get there. Okay, so let's talk about a few quick tips for what you can do if you're feeling worried about where your toddler is developmentally and you want to give them a little bit of extra help to get them where they need to go. So first and foremost, I would say trust your instincts. You have mama instincts that are amazing. If you think that there's a problem, there might be. And it's always worth having a conversation with your pediatrician or whatever professionals you have in your life. If your child is going to preschool, their preschool teacher might be a great resource, or their daycare teacher might be a great resource for people in the community that you could reach out to with various issues. Like, for example, if they're having speech difficulties, like who a great speech pathologist is in your area. It never hurts to ask for help. And giving your child extra tools will almost always be better for them than it will cause any harm. Okay, number 2, focus on the big picture. It's easy to get stuck on just the little things like, oh, he knows all of his colors except purple. We really have to work on learning what the color purple is. Or he can color with crayons, but he still hasn't figured out how to get the cap off with a marker. Those aren't big picture things in terms of development. It's better to focus on the big areas when you're focusing on physical development, cognitive development, emotional development, and hitting the big milestones instead of focusing on the little things that they may or may not be able to do. Think about the big picture, which is also where you'll see issues arise. If you feel like there's issues in big areas, that's when you should be concerned, not just in little things. And number 3 is really close. If you have concerns, seek out professional help. It's never bad to ask for help. And number 4, like we talked about in the beginning, I know it's so hard. I do it myself. But don't compare your child to other kids that are the same age. Every child is special. Every child is unique, and they develop at their own pace. That's how they're supposed to be. So try to take away that mom guilt from seeing that Tommy over there can put his own shoes on and my baby can't yet. It's okay. Every child develops at their own pace, and they'll all get there eventually. And number 5, celebrate your child's unique strengths and abilities. There are great things about your child, and it is so much better for them and for you to focus on the things that they do well and build on those skills instead of focusing on the areas that they're lacking and focusing on the holes, per se. When you work on the things that they're really good at and you build, you will find that that works much better for building their confidence, building their skills, and encouraging their development than it does to just focus on the things that they can't do. And a lot of that's a mindset shift, that we're thinking about building instead of filling in. We're thinking about the positive instead of the negative. And you might be just surprised how much of a difference that makes, both in how you approach developmental activities with your child and your child's confidence in how they approach activities and approach trying new hard things. I hope this video has helped, that you've learned something, that you'll be able to take some nugget of it away and apply it to how you approach play with your child and how you approach developmental activities, that it'll tweak your mindset and make all of those activities a little bit more fun for both of you. If you're looking for some developmentally focused activities that work on the skills that your toddlers and preschoolers need to be working on, and they don't require any crazy materials, they use things that you already have at home, I promise. You can find that guide down in the link in my bio. I think that you and your child will really enjoy them. Thanks. We'll see you next time.